Okay, time to check our poll to see what class I do next. Hello everyone, welcome back to another Grimgar video. Today's video we're going to talk about the Priest Guild. And yes, after this we're going to only have one more guild to talk about, which is going to be the Warriors Guild, and then I will go on to the extra classes that the light novel doesn't really go all that much into, so I'm going to put all of them into one video. But for now, let's talk about the Priest Guild. Just like in past videos, I'm going to talk about the history of the Priest Guild, the members of the Priest Guild that we know of, then I'll talk about their tactics and their equipment, and then I'll go into their skills and then fun facts at the end of the video. And just like other things in Grimgar, the Priest Guild is not entirely explained, but there are narrative implications that help us piece things together. So whenever I do start using things that are more narratively implied, I will use this symbol to let you guys know that is more or less a theory and less of full-on fact. There is no giant history to the actual Priest Guild like other classes, but what I am assuming is their history is more or less a bunch of people who were followers of Lumiaris, which is the biggest religion in Grimgar, coming together and actually making a church, and eventually turned into a guild to teach priests. Just like the paladins, the priests actually do have restrictions on their class, so they can use light magic from Lumiaris. Priests are not allowed to use any bladed weapons or any piercing weapons of any kind. You can only use blunt weapons like hammers, maces, staffs, stuff like that. Which compared to the Paladins Guild, which are not allowed to heal themselves.
You know what? This is bullshit.
I feel like the priests got off very, very easy. And it is also required for them to pray over any enemy they kill. Now, it is shown a couple times through the anime and the light novel and the manga. This praying over dead bodies thing, however, has been shown early on in Grimgar, and I don't believe it's been shown too often later on past volume 2 or 3. But since Mary and a bunch of the other priests still have their powers, it's implied they do it off screen, or while they're running away from monsters or something, because it's a small, quick gesture, so it doesn't really take up too much time. Most priests must say their spells exactly word for word and be perfect, or their magic will not actually work.
It's Leviosa.
Their spells usually have to have the wording, "O light, may Lumiaris' divine protection be upon you." And then they say the name of the spell, and the spell activates. Due to the fact that the priests and paladins and dread knights get their magic from their god, certain places in Grimgar's universe do not allow them to use that magic. For example, in the Dusk Realm, they can't use any magic because their god's words or their god cannot reach them there. Places like Piranha also do not allow their magic to be used. And in Derringer, their magic is at half strength. Members of the Priest Guild. First off, let's talk about one of the mentors, which is the only one we've seen from the Priest Guild, is Monato's teacher, Hominen. This guy. And starting from the top of the list of the members, Monato, Chibi, Mary, Nino, Tada, Anna, Gosh, Akina, Suga, Achika. The Priest Guild is actually a pretty well-rounded class, if I'm being completely honest, and it's nowhere near as powerful as the clerics from D&D that this guild is based off of. However, they are pretty decent in close range and can actually have some long-range usage if they have the right spells. But primarily, they are used to support the back line of their parties. So usually you will have the priest hanging out by their mage and protecting the mage. But there's nothing stopping a priest from helping out in the front line as well. It is usually not seen very often, but if the priest knows a lot of self-defense skills, which Mary does actually, she can go into the front lines and help out Hadahiro and the rest of the party. So the priest is kind of used as a character that goes back and forth from the back line to mid line into front lines whenever it's necessary. The priest has a lot of things on their plate when it comes to party management. They have to heal and watch out for people's wounds and be careful not to use too many healing abilities in small wounds that don't actually do much. So if there's any bruising or small cuts, most priests are smart enough to leave those alone and heal them later on. And then they'll focus on healing big wounds instead. Anything that restricts mobility, for example, will be usually healed pretty fast. A priest's job is also to constantly be able to tell if a party member is kind of, how do we put this, exaggerating on the pain that they're dealing with from a wound. For example, Ranta, early on in Grimgar, would constantly complain about every little cut he got, and Mary would refuse to actually heal him because she can tell it wasn't as bad as he was pretending, because he's kind of a big fat baby early on. So eventually, Ranta learned to be a little tougher and deal with the small cuts he would get here and there. Skills and abilities. The first skill that a priest will learn is Cure. Cure is a close-range healing ability. You have to put your hand over the wound and cast Cure. However, Cure does not cause the pain to fade. So the pain will still kind of be there, but the wound will be healed up pretty quickly. But it's mostly used for small wounds, though. Smash is the most basic of self-defense techniques that priests can learn. Essentially just them bopping enemies on the head, shoulders, or any place on their body with the tip of their staffs. Heal is a mid-range healing ability. You can essentially send a ball of healing towards your allies and it will heal them, and can be used to heal multiple wounds on someone's body at once. However, bigger wounds are going to need you to cast this spell multiple times to fully heal somebody. Counter-strike or hit back is a defensive martial arts technique. The priest allows the enemy to hit them, they'll block with their staff, and then they will counter-strike with the weight of the incoming attack back at them. Essentially, they redirect the weight of the attack and use that weight to hit the enemy. It can leave the enemy very, very dazed if it hits them hard enough. Guard stance or prepare is a self-defense stance that priests can take to increase their chances to block incoming attacks. Judgment or blame is a short-range light spell used by experienced priests. It utilizes the light of Lumiaris to damage their enemies. It does low damage, however it leaves the enemies with a debuff, making their body really numb and very slow. And in Volume 17 of Grimgar, we see Chibi use this very same spell on a bunch of shadow monsters. And a fun thing about this spell, I think depending on how much mana and how experienced you actually are, it does actually change how much damage the spell does. Chibi in Volume 17 used this spell when she was helping Renji out, and she blasted a bunch of dark monsters away like it was nothing, and she barely even said an incantation. She basically just said judgment and blasted them. D-Spell is a spell that essentially, well, turns off magic. It's primarily used in the Grimgar universe to essentially kill undead that are affected by the No Life King's curse. It turns them all to ash because the magic in their curse is essentially turned off. It's not clear. We rarely ever see anybody use D-Spell unless they're fighting like an undead, which I find really weird because you should definitely be able to turn off spells with this thing, but whatever. Light of Protection is considered a mid-level support spell. It can target up to 6 people and essentially makes it so the people that are hit with this buff and have enhanced physical abilities, their resistances all go up, and the spell speeds up the natural healing abilities of a person's body. The spell also lasts up to 30 minutes. Once it is cast, it gives you a small little sign on your wrist letting you know that the spell is active. Purify is a spell that essentially just cures people of poison and possibly some illnesses. Sacrament is a very high level healing spell. It is possibly the highest level healing spell that the priest can actually teach each other. You can heal most injuries with this spell. You can even reconnect the limbs if the limb is not destroyed. However, you cannot regrow lost organs, like an eyeball, for example. When Mary first learned Sacrament, she was only able to use it twice a day. Assist is a single target support spell that can stack on top of protection. It gives you an extra hexagram on your wrist, letting you know that it is active. Essentially makes it so you have kind of just better accuracy, I believe, but it doesn't say much on the actual Wikipedia. But I remember it making you just better at like performing certain feats. Revenge is another self-defense skill. Essentially, you take damage and then you dish it out even harder. Knock Off, another self-defense ability used by Mary, essentially knocks weapons out of people's hands by hitting them with the staff, hammer, or short staff that you have at hand. Honestly, if you're getting your hand hit by a short staff or a hammer, it's probably going to hurt your hand quite a lot too. Circlet is a spell that I rarely ever see used in the light novel, but essentially it creates a ring around a group of people and it heals anybody who is in the circle. Prayer is probably one of the most memeable fucking spells from Grimgar. Essentially, you cast a spell, you make a prayer, and you hope to God that your God isn't an ass. It is completely random. You have no idea what could actually happen once you cast a spell. For example, in the light novel, Suga cast this spell to try to get rid of a dragon. What ended up happening initially was nothing happened. Later on through the fight, however, Mist randomly just starts coming in to cover Hadahiro and his friends, and the dragons decide to leave because they can't see much, and they just go back to where they came from. This was very, very random and very, very lucky. Mary says that anything could actually happen if you cast prayer, and she actually hoped he wouldn't actually cast this because it could make things worse. Prayer is also probably the spell that most priests avoid because of this reason. Purulent? What the fuck? Okay, this next spell I can't even pronounce properly. Purulent is a spell that has been mentioned by Jesse, but has never been shown in the actual light novel. A second translation of Purulent is also Hocus Pocus. What the fuck? I'm not kidding. Look at it. When the spell is cast, Jesse himself says he has no idea what could actually happen. Let me know if you guys remember this from the light novel. Wikipedia is weird. Now for priest fun facts. Priests are actually the only class we have seen actually overcast spell. Overcasting is when you put way more energy into a spell than is required to power it up, and could do all kinds of things to the user, possibly making them lose consciousness, shorten their lifespan, God knows what. It depends on what Grimgar's writer wants to do that day, because I've only seen Mary do this once. But essentially, because they were in Derringer, Mary's spells were a lot weaker there. So she had to overcast and use a lot of mana to actually cast one spell to be able to heal Yume. Using Sacrament with this much energy made her really, really, really tired. And she was very out of it after that. But this leaves a lot of more interesting questions on the table. What would happen if someone like, say, Ranta overcast his summoning spell with this power up his demon? Who knows? But anyway, that's my video on the Priest Guild. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!